In July 2007, during one of the wettest months on record, a phone call reached English heritage archaeologist Amanda Chadburn. The ground at Silbury Hill had collapsed. Again, she wasn't surprised. She'd heard those exact words 7 years earlier, in May 2000, when a hole tore open at the summit without warning. 2 collapses, same monument, and by then, this Wiltshire mound had already been quietly failing for over 2 centuries. Silbury Hill is not a small structure. It rises 30 meters above the Wiltshire countryside, built almost entirely from quarried chalk, its raw volume rivaling the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is the largest artificial mound in Europe, and it has stood in near silence for roughly 4,500 years. For most of that time, nobody could say why it was built, who built it, or what, if anything, was sealed inside it. The first person to seriously study it left almost nothing behind but a sketch. In 1663, antiquarian John Aubrey drew the earliest known image of the mound, convinced it predated the Romans, possibly the Saxons too. He had no way to prove it. 77 years later, in 1740, William Stukeley went further, placing the mound at the center of an entire ceremonial landscape, a vast stone circle, processional avenues stretching east and west. Stukeley believed the mound had been a stage, a platform for something. He too had no proof. Both men left the real question untouched. What, exactly, was waiting inside it? By 1776, a wealthy landowner decided he was going to find out. He funded his answer through a subscription notice in a local newspaper, assembled a team of miners, and began sinking a shaft straight down from the summit. Not carefully, not scientifically, but with the confidence of a man who believed something valuable was buried beneath his feet. A king, a tomb, treasure. For the first 50 or 60 feet, the shaft produced nothing but chalk. Then the miners' candles started going out. Gas, most likely, pooling in a cavity none of them could yet explain. The shaft had opened onto a narrow void, barely 6 inches across, dropping straight down into a darkness the man financing the dig would later call, in his own words, bottomless. He was close to something. He just didn't know what, and he was about to pull the single strangest object anyone would find in Silbury Hill for the next 250 years. At 95 feet down, the man funding the dig wrote to a colleague that they had struck upon something he was, in his own words, sanguine enough to hope would lead to a great discovery. For a brief moment, in 1776, he believed he was on the verge of solving Silbury Hill entirely. He never got the chance to prove what that something actually was. The excavation was never properly published. What survives are fragments, letters, second-hand recollections, and rumors that grew wilder with each retelling. That a body had been found down there, a suit of golden armor, a man on horseback, frozen in the chalk for 4,000 years. None of it was true. A later steward of the estate, interviewed decades afterward, was clear that nothing of the sort had ever been recovered. What had actually turned up, according to one account from 1793, was described as a whalebone. Except it wasn't a whalebone at all. It was a fragment of wood. That detail sat unexamined for over 50 years, dismissed as a curiosity until 1846, when a clergyman proposed something that sounded almost too simple to matter. What if that wood hadn't been a relic left behind by whoever built the mound? What if it had been part of building the mound itself? It didn't answer the question everyone was still asking, but it quietly changed what the question even was. 70 years after the original shaft was sunk, a new team arrived with a different plan. Instead of digging straight down from the summit, they tunneled in from the side, aiming for the center. Within months, in 1849, they had driven a passage 88 yards into the mound's interior. A cross-section drawing survives from that dig, one of the only visual records of what lay beneath Silbury's surface. It shows distinct layers, stacked one on top of another. Proof that whatever this structure was, it hadn't been dumped into place in a single afternoon. And then, once again, the most important records vanished. The drawing survived. The field notes did not. This second excavation ended exactly where it was getting interesting, with a monument that clearly had a complicated internal history, and no one left who could fully explain what its layers actually meant. A century would pass before anyone tried again. And when they finally did, they wouldn't just dig into Silbury Hill. They'd broadcast the search into the living rooms of the entire country. By the 1960s, Silbury Hill had been a target for excavation for nearly 200 years, and the same fundamental question remained wide open. This time, the dig would be led by Richard Atkinson, one of Britain's most recognized archaeologists, already closely associated with major work at Stonehenge. If anyone was going to settle the matter, it was him. Like the 1849 tunnel, this new excavation would approach from the flank rather than straight down through the summit. But there was a difference. Every stage would be recorded, documented, studied in real time, and for the first time in the mound's long history, filmed. A BBC documentary series would carry the dig to a national television audience. Millions of people who'd never heard of this obscure Wiltshire earthwork would watch the search for its secrets unfold. Week by week, live. Expectations were enormous. Modern techniques, modern standards. Surely this time, reaching the heart of the structure would deliver what 2 centuries of shaft sinking and tunnel digging had failed to produce. First, it seemed to be working. Atkinson proposed something none of the earlier excavators had been equipped to suggest. Silbury hadn't been built in one continuous effort. It had gone through distinct phases, an original turf mound first, then a second phase using chalk, then a third layer piled on top of that. For the first time, there was a working model. Not of what was buried inside the hill, but of how the hill itself had grown. For a while, it felt solved. The tunnel reached deep into the structure. The team believed they understood its story. No hidden chamber, no golden king, no treasure vault in the dark. Just chalk, turf, and evidence of long, deliberate labor. Funding ran out before the work could be finished, and Atkinson recommended leaving the tunnel open for future researchers to continue where he'd left off. But something else happened during that dig, something buried not in the chalk, but in the archive. Local residents told Atkinson's team about strange activity at the summit. Signs the ground up there wasn't stable, that something was shifting, even collapsing, in small, easily dismissed ways. The information was noted, filed away, then effectively ignored. It would sit undisturbed in a records office for decades, unread and unconnected to anything, while the world moved on believing the case was closed. It wasn't closed. 30 years after the cameras stopped rolling, the ground at the summit would give way, and the reason why had been sitting in that forgotten file the entire time. 30 years after Atkinson's cameras stopped rolling, in May 2000, a hole opened at the summit of Silbury Hill where no hole should have been, on a monument that had supposedly already given up its secrets to modern science. Archaeologists who thought the work here was finished found themselves called back. Not to search for treasure this time, to figure out why a 4,500-year-old structure was suddenly failing from the inside. The answer was sitting in that old, ignored file the whole time. The tunnels, all of them, every shaft sunk by an 18th century treasure hunter, every side passage driven by Victorian antiquarians in 1849, every 20th century trench dug in the name of science. None of them had ever been properly filled back in. Voids had sat hollow beneath the surface for over 2 centuries, hidden under a skin of turf and soil that made the mound look, from above, exactly as solid as it had 1,000 years earlier. It wasn't ancient instability. It was human interference, decades old, finally catching up with the present. And that raised an uncomfortable question nobody wanted to say out loud. If Atkinson's own excavation hadn't actually solved anything, if his tunnel was now one of the very cavities threatening to bring the whole structure down, then how much of what people believed they knew about Silbury Hill was actually built on solid ground? There was no newspaper subscription funding this effort now, no television crew angling for footage. This was damage control on one of the most significant prehistoric monuments in Europe. It was no longer about discovery. It was about survival. The engineering firm brought in to stabilize the mound began work in early 2007, methodically tracing Atkinson's old tunnel back to its source. That's when they found it. A lintel installed during the 1960s excavation, still sitting exactly where it had been left decades before. And above it, something the original team had never documented. A series of voids, hollow pockets in the chalk, slowly working their way toward collapse. The crew shored up what they could, braced the failing sections, and in doing so, uncovered something sealed away, untouched, since the last time human hands had disturbed this ground. Antler picks, the same crude tools Neolithic laborers had used to carve this mound out of solid chalk, thousands of years earlier, left behind in the tunnel debris by whoever had dug there last. Then, that July, the second collapse of the decade tore open a void far closer to the mound's core than anyone expected, and buried inside it was something no previous excavation had ever managed to preserve. Buried inside that July 2007 void was organic matter no previous dig had ever managed to preserve. Grass, snail shells, fragile biological evidence that should have rotted away centuries ago, if it hadn't been sealed inside an airless chalk cavity the entire time. A specialist studying the grass stems made an unexpected discovery. The species present takes somewhere between 10 and 15 years to establish itself naturally, which meant this patch hadn't simply blown in and settled during construction. It had been growing there, undisturbed, for over a decade before the next layer of the mound was ever built on top of it. The snail shells told the same story. This wasn't a monument raised in one continuous burst of labor. There had been a pause, a gap, years where the half-finished structure simply sat exposed to open sky, doing nothing at all. Radiocarbon dating on turf sealed beneath the mound's very first layer gave researchers something no antiquarian, no Victorian tunnel, no BBC-filmed excavation had ever pinned down with real precision. A start date, around 2400 BC, give or take a generation. For the first time in 250 years of digging, there was a number attached to the beginning of the story, and that number changed everything. Roughly 1,200 years earlier, a very different monument had gone up nearby, the West Kennet Long Barrow, a burial site reused and reworked for generations. Its final closure, sealed permanently with massive sarsen stones, happened almost exactly when construction began on Silbury Hill. One researcher has proposed this timing isn't coincidence, that the closing of the old burial site and the start of this new undertaking mark the same moment. A hinge point, the instant one way of marking the world gave way to another. Some archaeologists now believe what rose in the barrow's place, layer by laborious layer, over as much as 300 or 400 years, wasn't a tomb, a treasure vault, or a viewing platform at all. It may have been a last stand, not a battle, a statement. A community watching its world dissolve, pouring generations of labor into one defiant act of permanence. 250 years of shafts, tunnels, gas-choked candles, and disappointed treasure hunters walking away with nothing but chalk dust on their boots. None of them ever found what they were looking for, because there was nothing to find in that sense. The secret was never hidden inside the mound. The secret was the mound.